Hi everybody, welcome to my channel Frugalisma. My name's Sam and this is where I talk about all things sewing. And today is day 67 of 100 days of sewing and I'm going to talk about bias binding. But first of all, welcome if you're new here. I usually bring out videos on a Wednesdays with tips and tricks. On a Friday I usually do Frugal Fridays where I look at the free patterns and discounts and challenges and competitions that I found during the week. On a Sundays I usually bring out a video that's either a review or some plans or makes or that sort of thing. So if you're new here and that's the sort of thing that you like, please consider subscribing. It helps YouTube show my videos to people, and if you're a long-term subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. So onto today's video. So I thought I'd just show you a quick tutorial of how to get over 2 meters of bias binding out of a little square. This is a 10-inch square of fabric by using the continuous bias method. So I will cut to a little tutorial on how to do that, and I've used this for years and years. I can't even remember where I saw the tutorial. It could have been Seam Work. I like to try and give credit where I've seen it. I've not invented this method, but I wanted to show it because it's within the frugal remit of the channel, in that you're getting so much from so little. And there's many ways of making bias binding, like all things in sewing. There's many ways of doing things. A lot of tutorials will show you how to do it, but using a lot more fabric. I just find this is a really quick and efficient way, and not only that, it saves up joining lots and lots of pieces as well. So not only is it efficient on fabric, it's efficient on time. So bias binding can be used for finishing all sorts of things, on necklines, armholes, also on hems. I've used it on Closet Core Calais shirt. And you can do it in a contrast fabric if you like, and that will just give you a little pop of colour. You can do it in the same fabrics if you want it to be more discreet. And of course there are many ways of applying bias binding as well. So I'm not showing you how to do that today. I'm just showing you how to make the bias binding, the continuous bias binding. I have got a separate video on an easy way of using bias binding on the Chelsea raglan top, and I will link that at the end for you. If it's the first time using bias binding, that's a nice simple way to introduce you to it. So I shall cut to the tutorial and hope that you like it. Okay. Start with a square piece of fabric. This is 10 inches square, but you can use whatever size you like depending on how much bias binding you require. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to cut on the diagonal from corner to corner. So you've got 2 pieces like that. So next step is to match one straight edge against another straight edge, like that, right sides together. And you know you've got it right because your diagonal sides are forming this V here. You're going to be sewing this bottom edge at about 1/8 of an inch. So you want about 1/8 of an inch overlapping with these little triangles here at the bottom. So match them up, pin them if you need to, and then you're going to take them to your sewing machine and sew those up. So can you see you've got a little bit overlapping there and a little bit overlapping there. And that's just to allow for the seam allowances of 1/8 of an inch. So this is it with the seam sewn. I've backstitched at either side so that it doesn't come undone, and I've just gone in and finger pressed this seam, and now I'm just going to press it. You're now going to mark 1 inch in along the diagonal and draw lines. Continue to draw lines 1 inch apart all the way, keeping parallel with this top line here all the way down. So your next step is to match these straight sides, not your diagonal sides, with each other, right sides together. So turn it round. And it's going to look a bit weird. You need to make sure that your first strip is free. So I'll turn it round so you can see. And there's your first line going there. You want that beyond the end of that there, and we're going to line up all these lines at the seam about 1/8 of an inch in, keeping that one free. Best thing to do is just pin it and then adjust it as necessary, because it can be a bit fiddly and a bit awkward. Okay, so it's all pinned up and you can see it's just a strange shape. And you put it like that, you've got a tube, you see that? You've got a tube, and all those lines should meet up. You might have a bit on the end here that's not quite an inch long. Don't worry about that, that's fine. And then you're going to take that to your machine and sew at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so that's the second side of your tube all sewn up, and I've gone ahead and pressed that seam open as well. If you just go in and finger press it first, it stops you getting your fingers burnt. And as you can see, now that it's formed a tube, it's slightly off kilter. So if you just take a good look at that, that's what you're aiming for when you finish sewing. And hopefully you can see these lines are more or less meeting each other in the middle. And what you're going to do now, and this is where the magic happens, is you're going to go in with your scissors and you're just going to follow those lines all the way around that tube, straight as you can. Just follow them all the way around. And this is why you want a marking tool that isn't going to iron off, because these bits here are quite important. You want a marking tool that's going to stay on. So chalk, tailor's chalk is ideal. And you're just going to follow that tube all the way around. And you can see, hopefully you can see these lines. So there you have just over 2 meters of continuous bias binding. And once you've done it once or twice, it'll take you 10 minutes, no more. And if it takes you 20 minutes, it's still quicker than cutting all those strips. What I do now as a final stage is I just go in and snip these dog ears. If you can see that little dog ear there, I just go in and snip those off. It's just an extra step that I do. And I find it feeds through my bias binding maker a little bit better. What you'll find is that you've got a nice even strip, or even-ish strip, and then at the end you've got that little odd bit and you can just snip that off. You can use that for something if you don't need the 1 inch wide. So then it's up to you how you treat this bias binding. You can see, because everything's been cut on the bias of the fabric, you've got that nice stretch, so it'll go around necklines and sleeves and things like that. And some patterns call you just to fold it in half. In the pattern that I'm using today, I'm just folding it in half. I'm not using the double fold bias binding. Or you can run it through one of these little handy gadgets and that folds it in for you. You can do it by hand. I gave up doing that a long time ago and invested in one of these because I just get burnt fingers. If you're doing it by hand, best thing to do is press it in half and then press those in towards that half, and that's sort of doing it without one of those little gadgets. And I will just demonstrate how to use one of these makers if you've never used one before and you're thinking of getting one, and just show you how easy they are. So you generally end up with a point on the end of your bias binding after you've cut it. Just grab yourself a pin and you need to feed it through the widest point of this bias type maker. And just use your pin to feed it through, and you'll see it poking through quite quickly. And as you pull on that bias maker, if you just put your pin in to hold it down, you can see that it's folding. And you just want to go in with the iron and press that. You can see that it does it all for you. No burnt fingers. And that's just how you use those. It's like a single fold bias binding. Double fold is when it's folded over again like that, I think. So you can do this on any size of square. I've used 10 inches, but you can go smaller, but obviously you're going to yield less. On the ruffle top that I made recently, I only had 7 inches square that I could actually get out of the scraps, and that just yielded enough for me to get around the neckline. There is a calculator that will tell you how much you can yield out of a certain size square, so that obviously the bigger that you go, the more you're going to yield. And by the same token, you can go narrower on your bias binding and you can go wider, so you can do 1.5 inches if that's your preference. I've got 2 bias makers, one's 1.5 inches and one's 1 inch. If you've got a pattern that doesn't have bias binding included and it's got facings instead, and you're one of those that doesn't like facings because they flip out a lot, you can actually swap over and use bias binding. So I'm a strong advocate of bias binding in its place. It just finishes a garment nicely. So I hope you liked that little tutorial. Let me know below if you're fancying trying it out, and let me know how you get on, and let me know how you usually do it and see if you think it's a bit more efficient. Like I say, it's a technique that I've used for many years and it's always worked for me. If you come from the quilting world, you might have other ways of doing it, but I find this this is efficient on time and efficient on fabric as well. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know below if you're going to give it a go, and I will speak to you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.